Andrew McCullough. He is the senior writer for The Athletic, and Andy joins us now. He's covering the Shohei Ohtani story. Also, he has a book coming out, The Last of His Kind, Clayton Kershaw and the Burden of Greatness. Andy, thanks for joining us. How would you sum up, recap the last 48 hours?
Yeah, it's a bit busier of a week than I expected to have. I was kind of looking forward to watching the tournament, and getting ready for opening day next week. Yeah, ever since the LA Times, broke the original story about Ohtani and the firing of Ippei Mizuhara, the interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, and that was subsequently followed up by a really comprehensive and bizarre, frankly, story from ESPN, quoting Mizuhara extensively. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, trying to get a sense of like what Major League Baseball's role in all of this, what exactly the competing narratives are suggesting, and just kind of trying to get a handle on what's going on, all while the Dodgers have been in Seoul, South Korea, and have, been on a plane for a significant portion of, these 48 hours. So, I was looking forward to watching some basketball, but I won't be.
But I'm trying to understand how they made the interpreter available to talk to ESPN for 90 minutes. Like, that's mind boggling, Andy.
I would agree with you, Dan. It is a very interesting decision to have made Mizuhara available, especially given that if you talk to like legal experts, right, when detectives are trying to break a case, they like to get a suspect and lock him in on a story and commit to a timeline of events. And Mizuhara did that and then subsequently recanted, which sort of casts everything he said into doubt. Why would you believe him when he said everything that he just said was a lie? And so you have these two competing narratives, one in which Ohtani essentially you know, paid off his friend's gambling debts. And then you have what Otani's camp is now saying is that, Mizuhara committed massive theft, millions of dollars potentially. And they have not provided evidence yet of, how that theft was, occurred. But that's kind of for the authorities to figure out exactly how that happened. There's just like, there's so much left unsaid. There's not like a shoe that needs to drop here. It's like a foot locker that needs to drop.
And Otani coming back from spring training, can he avoid not saying anything? I mean, do you just use hey, it's a criminal investigation, I can't say anything?
I suspect that is the tack they will take for as long as they can. I think the longer that there's silence, the more it allows kind of rumor and innuendo and conjecture and speculation and all those sort of, synonyms to fill the void. I think a lot of people are just wondering what the heck is going on. Ohtani was fairly private to begin with. He doesn't, they took, it was like pulling teeth trying to get his, representatives to admit the name of his dog during the offseason. He got married. He announced he was married this spring. His teammates with the Angels didn't even know he had a romantic partner. So it's, I suspect that their strategy will be silence and point to, an ongoing investigation. But it casts a pall over the start of the season for the Ohtani and the Dodgers for sure.
How do baseball's gambling rules factor into this?
Yeah, so it depends on which, narrative is proven to be accurate. And if he's the victim of a theft, which is what, his camp is alleging and what Major League Baseball is currently accepting, as something of a premise, not much of anything per se. It's kind of a matter of, seeing just kind of how that theft occurred. If he was theoretically paying off an illegal bookmaker or placing bets with an illegal bookmaker, that would be a violation of Rule 21, which is the famous, betting on sports sort of thing. And then it just is a matter of, did he bet on baseball? There's zero evidence that, there were any bets placed on baseball. Mizuhara denied that in his, one of the accounts he gave ESPN, right?
Yeah.
I think, and so like that's kind of like the central question. I think is like just figuring out what were these bets placed on is probably the most important thing. If it's baseball, then that is gets into really serious ramifications. If it's not baseball, the league has pointed to there was Jared Cozart was fined in 2015 for illegally gambling, and it's more of a pay a fine, commissioner's discretion type of situation.
In a week, where is this story in your opinion?
It's a great question. I mean, I think I don't know how quickly evidence will come out. This came up because, there's a long-standing probe into, bookmaking operations in Southern California, and Ohtani's name appeared in that investigation, that federal investigation, and reporters from the LA Times and ESPN who've done tremendous work on this, sort of ferreted it out. And so it's not like there's a timeline of like, oh, in a week, Ohtani's going to address all of this. I suspect that they will continue to have the cone of silence and just wait for the process to play out. But that could also change. I mean, the fact that Mizuhara spoke initially was, so shocking. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll decide to talk a third time. But I suspect it's kind of going to grind on for a while as, Ohtani's legal team sort of, allows the authorities to pursue these charges.
How did the interpreter get back from South Korea?
I don't know. That's a great question. I really don't know. I don't know. It has been asked, and folks in that world with the Dodgers, with Ohtani's camp, no one really wants to talk about this situation for some reason.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, that is a wonderful question.
He is a senior writer for The Athletic, Andy McCullough. Also, his book, The Last of His Kind, Clayton Kershaw and the Burden of Greatness. Well, let me ask you one question about that. What is the burden of his greatness?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you would know, I think this is like the only media outlet that Kershaw seems to like dealing with is coming on your show. So you've talked to him a lot over the years. And I think I've covered baseball for 15 years now, and I feel like he is a person who, because of what he has achieved, has been held to a certain standard and has kind of spent his career, trying to reach that. And, you can see it in the postseason struggles and the way that he has, subjected himself to, workloads, to pitching through injuries, to, basically putting his body and reputation at risk, all in service of trying to, essentially give everything that he can to his craft. And so, the book is an exploration of kind of what it has been like for him, really in these last 20 years, operating under that and living essentially like in the hull of a ship and dealing with that pressure, if that makes sense.
Did our show make the book?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because like he talks about stuff, and then I would, he and I talked like a bunch for this over the past couple years, and so there were times when he talked about things on here, and I would, get him to expand or explore. Just it opened up avenues, and so thank you for all your help over the years. It was really helpful in research.
Yeah. I find him interesting, but I had to approach him from a different angle than just, let me ask you baseball things. There's a lot of different ways to try to get to somebody, and I didn't know him. And then the first time we had him on, I realized that if I was going to get anything baseball-wise, I couldn't go ask baseball questions. They almost had to come out in a different way. I don't know if you felt that way. I was throwing off speed pitches constantly to him.
You gotta, look, you gotta make him work a little bit. I mean, he's an exceedingly disciplined sort of person. He's very controlled and measured in what he wants to say. He's a very thoughtful guy. And so very often it's hard to kind of move him off the spot, as it were, in like a kind of a tennis metaphor. So yeah, we had really, lengthy conversations over the past couple years about just kind of his career, childhood, legacy, all that stuff, all the stuff he hates talking about. But it was a enjoyable process. So I'm excited for people to get a chance to read it in a couple of months.
All right. Andy, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That's Andy McCullough, senior writer for The Athletic, and his book, The Last of His Kind, Clayton Kershaw and the Burden of Greatness.